Welcome to the Autism Dad podcast. I'm Rob Gorski. Got a great show for you guys today, so thank you for taking the time to be here. One of the most common questions that I get from parents raising kids who have autism or ADHD is how do you help them to navigate grief? Whether it's the loss of a pet or loss of a grandparent or just some type of loss in general, where our kids can really struggle to navigate some of those situations. And as parents, we can struggle to help them navigate it. So my guest today is Sylvia Moore Meyers. She is a grief specialist. She is a mom, and she's also autistic herself, and the author of the book called Gold Scars. And we're going to talk all about how to navigate some of this stuff and how, grief is treated nowadays and ways we can help our kids to be better prepared to navigate some of those things as we go forward. So I appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much. And we're going to drop you right into the interview. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate it. Could you take a second and introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we have a couple of questions about grief in neurodivergent kids, and then we want to talk about your book.
Sure. So I'm Sylvia Moore Meyers. I am 62, almost 63. I'll be 63 in January. Yay. And several years back, I started writing a book called Gold Scars, and it's about the loss of my child, grief and PTSD and trauma. And I became an advanced grief coach and, specialist. So I was writing that book, and the more I researched, the more I started seeing that my mother, who was a big focus of my book because there was a lot of neglect there as a child, I saw her as being Asperger's. And I remember brother speaking about that once, and I called him and said, tell me more about this Asperger thing because I just need to know. And he said, yeah, mom didn't like anyone to touch her. She couldn't take a shower because it bothered her. Rain, the water hitting her on the head. And he named a dozen other things. And she was exceptionally intelligent, super high IQ, a politician, was sought after advisor, and totally the most non-emotional human being you'll ever meet. But at any rate, I realized towards the end of the book that I had a lot of the same traits. And so I sought out, I put at the end of the book, it's like, I'll let you know if I find out if I'm autistic or not. And sure enough, after the book launched, I finally got my appointment with Wildwood, and I was diagnosed as autistic. I was batting 400 on the test too, by the way. I was like, if you needed a 35, I had a 53. It's like if it was possible to say you are so autistic, that would be me. So if the test score,
isn't it crazy how you don't recognize it until you do, and then once you do, you can't unsee it.
Oh no, it's It totally. It was like someone had put my life in a box and taped it shut, and these people opened it up and said, and here you are. And I'm like, hello, me. Nice to know you.
That was like me with ADHD. I was diagnosed about 2.5 years ago, and no clue my entire life. But then that knowledge, it's like all of a sudden, it's like all the pieces just fit together into this picture, and everything made sense.
It did.
And I can't not recognize it anymore.
No, absolutely. You see it in everything, and that it's good. I mean, it's sad too. I mean, I had to take. I'm a grief specialist. I'm working on my Ph.D. right now. I'll have my MA in Human and Crisis by May and continue on that. But I had to put my own family through grief counseling because they were in total denial that I could possibly be autistic. Anything else. It's like, my oldest son called me last year when I first got the diagnosis, about a year now. Calls me, goes, Mom, we've talked. I went, mm-hmm. Says, and we've decided that maybe you're not autistic. Maybe you're just ADHD. Like that. I go, I appreciate that, Isaac, I do, but I'm pretty sure these 2 PhDs knew what they were doing. It took them 6 months to get to this. I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. Pretty sure they're smart.
It doesn't change anything.
It's okay.
It doesn't change anything.
I'm still mom.
Yep. It's just context, right? Like It just helps us to better understand ourselves. And there's like a grace to that.
Yeah.
Where you just stop beating yourself up for things. Well, for me, I stopped. Well, I make an avid effort to stop beating
Thank you.
myself up for things. It's a work in progress. We kind of talk about grief, and there's there are there's three questions that I get all the time
Yeah,
from parents, and I think they're really common situations for most families. Well, unfortunately, some of them are very common situations, but um, when you're dealing with neurodivergent kids, it's a it's a big challenge, right? Because there's
absolutely.
generalization, and they associate, like, if grandma went to the hospital because she wasn't feeling good, but she passed away while she was there, now it's the hospital. Anytime someone goes to the hospital, they're going to die. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
there's
Yeah.
so the first question is, um, how do you help a neurodivergent kid
Mm.
navigate, like, the death of a close family member?
Sure. And, I think you and I spoke about this before, that we broke grief about 100 years ago in this country.
Yep.
We stopped taking children to grandma's house where they laid her out in the parlor, and now we take her to a funeral home where they lay her out in a parlor. They stole that from grandma's house, by the way. And it's a strange place. It's not where grandma lived. And a lot of times we put the kids in the kitchen at the funeral parlor and give them all the stuff to eat, and exclude, if we even bother to bring them, we exclude them from the process. And the problem with that is death is pretty much 100% diagnosis for all of us. And explaining that to your child when you have the opportunities to, like the death of a pet or death of a grandparent, it's a tough conversation, but you can't ignore it, because you will compound that grief, because now they cannot associate what happened to grandma. Someone stole her. Like you said, every time they go to the hospital now, there will be trauma. Anytime they go to a funeral parlor, if they weren't really, helped with that process, during the time it happened, they'll be petrified when they drive by the place, let alone go in the parking lot. You'll never get them out of the car. Right. So that association with a place, like you said, is very common. But there's easy ways to describe grief and loss to a child so there won't be trauma. Otherwise, autistic children alone are prone to PTSD in times of great despair. But an autistic child is particularly in tune to that. It's going to happen if you allow it. So preventing that is having communication about what life and death really means. It's difficult.
And when my kids, and we talked about this the last time, whenever we would have a death in the family and my kids were little, um, I always opted not to bring them with me to the funeral because I thought I was protecting them.
Sure.
And I knew that they picked up, they absorbed everyone else's emotions. And between my oldest saying inappropriate things, not meaning to come across the way that he did or does, but you just don't say some of this stuff when someone's dealing with a loss. Like, not everybody's going to deal with it very well, or just become so overwhelmed and overstimulated because of all the emotion
Yes.
and all of just the energy that's there, right? They pick up on all that, even if they don't understand it.
They
And
get
so
it.
I opted not to do that. I regret that now, especially after talking to you, because I realize now that, like, I should have allowed my kids
Yeah,
at least the option to go.
sure.
And, that way, when they were experiencing those emotions, or they were experiencing whatever they experienced, I was there to guide them through it and model.
Absolutely. Modeling grief is what we fail to do. And they have to see us sad. They need to see us cry. They need to see us lose someone so that they're prepared for that when that happens to them. I've have people I know very well, and they did not take their children to a funeral of a relative, a child relative. And the reason they didn't is, quite frankly, the father said to me, I just don't want to expose them to that. They lost their mother when they were very young, right? They didn't want another funeral of someone they cared about. A few years later, he died. And the unpreparedness that those two children had to experience, and now they're burying their father. My personal opinion is that he should have exposed them to loss. They needed to see him grieve, right? Because when you're unprepared for that, then that sets you up now that, you're scared you're going to lose everybody. You're fearful of death, your own death, your mom's death, your grandma's death, your dog's death, and that you will super focus on that. And an autistic child will take that to the nth degree.
Oh, and perseverate.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. So your advice then, and I mean, developmentally appropriate, obviously, I would think,
Right,
because
exactly.
not every kid is going to be in a place to be able to navigate some of this stuff.
No,
But
if you've met one autistic person, you've met one. Right,
yeah,
exactly.
so exposure to grief isn't, whether it's a funeral or whatever the situation is, like, is important. It seems counterintuitive, but it's not what you're saying. You're
No.
saying, like, we need to expose our kids at an early age with us present to help
Yes.
them learn to navigate, so they can see that, look, you can, as terrible as this is,
Mhm.
there is another side to this. Like, you will get to
There
the other
is.
side,
You
and
will.
without that experience and guidance, you don't know.
Well, put it very simply, for any child, moving across town is traumatic in a little way or a big way. But for an autistic child, um, that's the equivalent of death, really. A big change, a monumental change in their life is huge. We don't just wake them up on Saturday morning and say, surprise, we're moving
Yeah.
today. No, we've prepared them for months if we're wise. We're saying, hey, we're going to put the house up on the market and we're going to start this very long process. We're going to start packing or make a game out of it, but we're going to move them into that moving. Is it still going to be a little traumatic? Yes, but the blow will be less severe if they're prepared for it ahead of time. The same thing with the loss of the pet. If you give them a puppy and you don't warn them that one day in 6 to 12 years, it's a very good possibility that we may lose Fluffy.
Mhm.
If you don't have that conversation in your own parenting way, then when it does happen, it's a monumental loss instead of an expected loss of. And
Well,
I
'cause
just think
yeah,
that we need to do that.
well, because otherwise they're assuming that they'll live, like, they might live forever, or they're
Sure.
never gonna lose them, and the reality is nothing and no one lives forever.
No, no, no. And I think that's where we go wrong is we don't prepare them. We don't, and then now we have a child in grief recovery, and that's a very long process. It takes a very long time to get through PTSD when it's grief and loss related.
My youngest, he's 16, and he just started, this is his first year in college full time,
Yay.
and he had to do, he has to do these, like, essays, and he picks the most obscure things to write about. He did something about death anxiety, and
Yes.
it was based on a study from people who survived car bombings in Iraq or something. Like, I mean, it was just really out
Intense.
there. Yeah, and
Cool.
random. But, he talked about how, you have, uh, people fear death, so they come up with ways of, like, um, processing things to make it
Yeah,
easier for them to deal with. And I think a lot of times, maybe that's because we're not, like, exposing
we're
people to that
not.
in a healthier way, right? It's
We don't really see it when we're children, unless you're, like you just said, unless you're exposed to trauma as a child, you're in a war zone, that type of thing. On average, we don't really think about dying. It crosses our mind. And until something tragic happens, like diagnosis of cancer or, someone that we know that passed away, children don't really think about death and dying. They don't think about the final day of their life is coming someday. They don't think about it. So you don't want them to find out about that on their own at the age of 12 or 20, for that matter, when the first important person in their life passes away. So
yeah.
it's just something we don't dwell on, but we tell our children. I mean, my children, unfortunately, were 16 and 7 when their brother was murdered. buying a candy bar and a Mountain Dew at the grocery store. They came out and got robbed. So they learned tragic death the hard way, as did I. Um, we'd never really dealt with that type of loss. It was after that my parents died, their grandparents. My brothers passed away, and I lost a sister, one of their aunts. But their first real taste of death, unfortunately, was very traumatic and unexpected, and they were not prepared for it, and neither was I.
I don't know. I mean, you can't be prepared for something like that, can you?
Not that type of death, but I think the process of
The
knowing
concept.
the concept of losing someone, because it was really hard on all of us,
Oh my God.
obviously.
And
That's
I'm
why I
very
became a grief
sorry
specialist. Yes, thank you. I
for your
appreciate
loss. And we talked about this the last time.
it. Yeah,
People say like, I'm very sorry for your loss because we
yeah.
don't know what else to say, but
That's because we broke funerals.
right.
That's
And I'm sitting here
why.
like, I'm like, I was trying not to say that, but
No,
like,
it's okay.
it
That one's
doesn't
okay.
feel,
It's the only thing that you know to say. What
yeah.
in the English language, there's no words that you can put together, no matter how hard you try, that actually express how you feel when someone has lost someone that they love. There's no words. It's like, I'm sorry that you lost someone that you love. You can't say all that. You say, I'm so sorry for your loss, and that's enough. What we do instead is we stand 2 hours in line to go up to the end and torture the parents of a child, or
Oh yeah.
the husband of a lost wife to cancer. Or whatever. We just go torture them for a few minutes and just say, there's going to be another angel in heaven. No, there's not. It's like God, it was God's will. It's like, I'm sorry, my God doesn't kill anybody. but
Yeah.
um, but I mean, we do that, and then dutifully, the person that lost the other person stands there and goes, thank you. And we're thanking them for torturing us. And that's what funerals are like in
It's like
America now.
well-intentioned dysfunction,
Yes. Thank you.
you know?
Beautifully said.
And like my oldest is very much one of those people, like I said, who makes comments that are just, he doesn't mean them in a way. Um, and I don't know if I even told you this the last time. So when my grandmother passed away a few years ago, uh, I was very close to her, especially towards the end. I spent every day for the last 6 months. She was in a nursing
Oh,
home by us, and I went and visited her every day. And as we knew that it started getting down towards the end, my kids would come every day after school. We'd have ice cream with grandma or great grandma and stuff like that. And then when it got closer to where she was, it was harder for them to experience time with
sure.
her because they were seeing her slip away, and it was making them very, very sad. My oldest, um, decided that he wanted to see her one more time and say goodbye, and then
Okay.
not see her again after that because he didn't want to remember her another way. And I was like,
Okay.
I don't know about that. So like I talked to my family about it because I wasn't sure what we were gonna do. And then we talked to her to make sure that she was okay with that. Cause it's like I wasn't sure how do you even navigate something like that. But he
Yeah.
he he went into the room and he sat down with her and he just told her, he's like, I know you're gonna die. And it makes me very sad. And I wanted to say goodbye to you and tell you how much you meant to me. And
Wow.
I recorded him doing this because I know it was such, I had so many reservations about it, but it ultimately turned out to be one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed
It is
because
beautiful.
he was inadvertently acknowledging the fear she was experiencing
Yeah.
and validating that. And she was reinforcing with him that it was going to be okay.
Wow.
And in a way, like they comforted each other in a way that were had been up to me, I probably would have not allowed it just because I
Huh.
didn't understand like what would happen, I guess, again, based on what I've experienced with this kind of thing, like that was just, you don't want to remind her that she's dying. She already knows she's dying. Like, let's not, but it was a truly profound experience that has really changed my view of like how people deal with grief.
That one thing for autistic people is they have a superior way of problem solving. And I think
Yeah.
he
Cut
did an
right to the
excellent
chase.
job. He cut right to the problem. I hope someone loves me that much that they will tell me that before I get to the point where I can't hear them say it. I
Yeah.
don't want people hanging over my dead body telling me how much they love me and miss me. I hope that they'll tell me now. And that's beautiful that he
And
did
the
that for her.
courage that it
What a
took for
gift.
him to
Yes.
say that. Like, for him, it wasn't courage. It was just, well, like, it's logic for him. Like, it just
Logic.
makes
That's what I was
sense to
thinking.
him. And
Totally logical.
we're gonna cut out all the, like, I don't know why you guys are doing things like this. And then afterwards, like, my other two kids are grieving like hard, right? I'm
Sure.
grieving,
Sure.
and they're upset with him because he's not in a
Yeah.
way that makes sense to them. And I'm like, guys, everybody deals with this in different ways. So
Yeah.
we're not going to criticize how your brother is
Uh-uh.
grieving, because it's, he said goodbye like 3
Yes,
weeks
he
ago,
did.
you know.
I was going to say he
Um,
did grieve, and in his case, I have to say it was brilliant. It probably eliminated a lot of the trauma that he would have experienced
yep.
otherwise. So I think he needs to go on and get a PhD and help other people because that was brilliant.
There's times where you talk to him and it's just like, oh my God, Gavin, like, you can't say stuff like that. And then there's times that I walk away, especially with like a podcast interview. Like, he'll be on a podcast sometimes and we'll talk about like his adventures in independence and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And you walk away feeling like it was a therapy session. Like,
yeah, good.
there are times where the most, like, common sense eludes him, but then there's times where he will say something so profoundly and mean every bit of it. Like, it
Yeah.
comes from a really deep place. And it's just like, holy cow, like, how did you, like, I feel like I should pay you for, like, just, like, it was a therapy session.
You can't
And
afford him.
probably not. And then there's times where he'll say things that just come off as so insensitive. Like, when the kids are sad, he would say something like, well, she lived a good life. We all
Yeah,
die. And it's just
yeah.
very direct, very matter of fact. And he's not wrong,
No,
but but my other kids would be resentful of him because it
yeah,
was
there you
like,
go.
"Well, did you not
His
love her
empathy
like that?"
level, no, he loves and he feels and he misses and he grieves, but his empathy dial is a little different than theirs, and that's really all it is. I think he's brilliant.
Well,
I say a lot of things that people take. Let's say, I can't believe you just said that. It's like, well, they needed to hear it.
yeah,
So
yeah. And it's just, and it's not like he ever says anything wrong.
right.
It's, if you know him, you know that he doesn't mean anything by it.
Mm-mm.
But if you don't, it's like, Gavin, you got to be careful, because I feel like if you say this to the wrong person, they're going to punch you in the face. Like, we just got to
That's
be
right.
careful how we say things to people, because he's just sort of learning to navigate some of that stuff as he gets older. But I
Yeah,
just thought that was a great example of kind of going against the grain and doing things in a
good.
way that he needed, and ultimately it ended up being something that was profoundly beneficial to
Yeah.
everybody that was there, and I will never forget that. I'll never forget that.
I think he did it beautifully. I remember James holding Emma's hand, and she was on her last couple of hours of life, and she just woke up and looked him in the eyes, and she said, "Don't grieve me. Don't grieve me." And that fact that he was there for that moment, and then he walked away, and then she passed away in the night. Those moments that we get with someone that we love before we lose them can make all the difference of how we deal with that loss later. So I think he was brilliant in that respect. There's nothing wrong with the way the other kids did it, by the way.
Yeah.
Grieving is different for everyone.
And I think too often we tiptoe around
Yeah,
these things
stop doing
because we
that.
don't
Yeah.
want to say the wrong thing, or we don't know what to do or say.
Right.
And I tend to take the view of, like, as long as it comes from a good place,
Yeah.
no one knows what to say. I
No.
mean, you're not going to say things perfectly. Kids especially aren't going to say things perfectly, but if you know that
No.
they mean well and they just want to
Yes.
comfort you and be there with you, like, then that's enough for me personally.
Exactly. Well, I think they were guessing like 2,000 people, roughly thereabouts, came to Jacob's funeral. And I spoke to every last one of them because we stood there
Wow.
for hours. And not one person offended me, no matter what they said or didn't say, or the stories. Some of the stories were heart wrenching. But we laugh about it now, and I wrote I have a whole chapter in my book about what not to say at a funeral, the cringe moments. But to be honest, when you're the one on that receiving end, whatever anyone says, they waited to say it to you, wrong or right, you take it well. So that's the good news for all of us that screw up at the funeral.
That's good
That the
because
receivers of it are just grateful that you showed up and that you care to be there. That's really it. They don't count the flowers. They don't go through and say, oh, it doesn't look like Bill gave us anything. So
Well, these flowers are like,
these are horrible. I bet they never looked at. You don't even know about them when you leave. They go to the grave, and you never look at a card or one. It's what the people that are waiting there, and some of them just walk up and hug you, and that's good. Sometimes no words are the best things to say.
And that's the hardest thing to do, though, I think sometimes the right thing to say is nothing.
Pretty much.
Or just your presence says more than what your words could say.
Precisely. My friend Sherry came to my house after Jacob died, and she just sat on my couch. She didn't say a word to me at all. She said, I'm leaving. She said, you ever need me? I don't care what time of the morning or the night or the day it is. If you call me, I will come here. And so sure enough, about 3 months later, she was sitting on my couch at 3 a.m, once again, saying nothing. If you knew Sherry, that woman can't shut up. She cannot be in the room without taking it over and talking too much. But when it came to death, she had lost a brother early on. And she was an expert at how not to say anything, when someone's had a loss. So I tell people, be a Sherry.
Be a Sherry, not a Karen.
Yeah. Don't be a Karen.
Not offensive. I mean, there's a lot of nice Karen people.
I know
there's a lot of nice people who are just happen to be named Karen out there. So
that's right. Hey, the Karens are the ones that make you all the food and send it to your house. So we got to give them a break as well.
There you go. Yeah. So let's talk about your book.
Sure.
Just tell me about your book.
Sure. It's called Gold Scars. It's the truth about grief, loss, and trauma, and how to beautifully mend. One of the things about my life, I think I've described this to you before, but my trauma didn't start when someone murdered my child, nor did it start 8 months later when I got followed home by a serial killer and just about killed in my own driveway. Those were monumental moments in grief for me. They may have been catalyst for the book and for the recovery process, but my trauma went all the way back from childhood, from neglect. I was sexually harassed and abused by employers. I'd been through crap. As an autistic child, undiagnosed and a high masker, I was bullied, and I had to learn to be sociable to make friends, which is hard because then you come home at the end of the school day and just collapse on the floor, right? I was your typical undiagnosed autistic girl, so the trauma was lifelong. Well, after Jacob and after I was attacked, facing a murder trial and an attempted murder trial back to back, after all of that, within a year's time, I just saw my life crumbling apart, right? So I went to get some type of help. And when I found the magic spoon, as they say, I wanted to share it with everyone. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to share this with other people, and helping my children to get through grief as well. Because they went through Great Depression. And Daniel, he was young, but as soon as he turned a teenager, 16, 17, 18, 19, those were hard years for him. He was living the grief now over again, because now he was the age of his brother when his brother died, right? And as each of those two boys became older than their oldest brother, that had a traumatic effect on them as well. But I became a grief specialist, an advanced grief specialist, and I was helping people one person at a time. And that wasn't enough for me. I wanted to help more people. So I wrote the book. I opened up my heart. I basically told everybody everything that had happened to me in this book in short stories, but with the positivity that there is a way to get back to joy. And I call it the 7 to heal. And I use, see my little card. I got my headphones on, so it's like having,
I know you're tethered pretty.
I'm tethered pretty.
Yeah. But, a little on a short end.
It's okay. It's for you, brother. It's for you.
It's working.
But it's called 7 to heal. Which is a mending process, because we don't really heal from scars, do we? Wounds, we scar, and so we're going to have scars. And I love to say that it's kind of a famous line, but I say it in the book, and I say it every time I talk to someone, that people with wounds are looking for people with scars. We want to talk to someone who's been through it. We want to see that person that's on the other side. When we're hurting and we're hurt the most, and we're trying to get through those initial days, months, and years of grief, we want someone that's actually been on the front line before. And they've got the scars to prove it. And that's the essence of what that book means. And gold scars is like the beautiful kintsugi vase. It breaks on the floor and you don't throw it in the trash. You pick it up, you mend it with gold, you make it twice as beautiful as it was before, and you fill it back up and you use it again. And it's the beauty of being scarred, is that you can come out on the other side more beautiful, beautifully mended, and be a testament to the next person that you speak to. So the 7 H's are help, getting help first, healing, starting that healing process, because a lot of people don't heal because they don't start to heal. They just get stuck in that I can't get help phase, and that's where they meander for years. Being healthy again, just taking care of yourself, eating the right foods, exercise, having healthy thoughts, hope. I mean, just having something to be hopeful for resets the brain. It causes endorphins. It just regenerates your
Mhm.
mindset. And everyone has something to be hopeful for. Everyone does. Holiness is what I call not just godliness, which is very important, but feeling worthy again. We are made in the image of God. We have worth, and no one can take that away from us. So learning that you are a worthy person, and that you didn't do anything to kill your child or your wife or your grandma or anything like that. Then being happy. Even forced smiles create chemicals in your brain that actually heal you. They heal wounds on your body, actually. But learning to be happy again, and taking advantage of those happy moments. And then hilarious. Being able to out loud laugh again, even after the death. When Jacob died, we had family coming in from everywhere. My brother flew here with his wife on an airplane on Delta, I think it was, or American Airlines or something. Well, his ex-wife booked the same flight, and they ended up on the front row together. Ex-wife, wife, and him. And the steward found out about that, and he asked everybody, he goes, is anyone here today flying with their wife by chance? And, a lot of people raised their hand. And then he said, is anybody flying today with their ex-wife by chance? And my brother raised his hand again. He stood up and turned around to the manifest of people, and he said, my girlfriend tried to come on this flight, but we had to book her on the next flight down. But it just made everyone laugh just hysterically on that plane. Well, he got to our house the morning of the funeral, and he told that story in the kitchen before we all left to go to the funeral parlor, right? And guess what happened? We all laughed. We all laughed hysterically, almost to tears. It was so funny. And it just takes me to that point that a lot of people forget that it's okay to laugh. It's okay to remember funny things. When we talk about Jacob now, we don't talk about how he died. We talk about how he lived. The funny things he did, his Steve Urkel impersonations were hilarious, but he was a comical, fun to be around musician, guitar playing artist. And we talk about all of that. And there's times for sadness, sure, always in remembrance. But most of the time when we talk about Jacob, we're smiling. And it takes effort to get to that spot. And that's what my book is about, getting you from the hurt to the healing. And what I call mending instead, because we don't really heal. We scar.
I was thinking about that as you said that. And I think when people talk about healing, I think it sends a message that like everything is put back the way it was before whatever happened.
Yes.
And that doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
And so
I
maybe
think it's
people
hard
get
to tell
stuck.
people that. Yeah, it is actually stuck. It's exactly the word. When you're talking to someone one-on-one, and after about 3 sessions, they look you in the face and go, Rob, I just want to know when I'm going to feel better. Are you even qualified to help me? Because I still feel as shitty as I did 3 weeks ago when we started this process. When am I going to feel better? And then I have to go, I'm sorry. I failed you because I forgot to set the expectation that healing is a long process. But it's true. They get stuck in it and they expect you're going to give them a lobotomy, right? And just take away all
Flip a
the
switch.
pain. Yeah. I did not need a way to forget what happened to me or to my son.
Hmm.
I needed a better way to remember. And that's what my book is about. I want to give you a better way to
Like,
remember.
like remembering without necessarily being sad.
Exactly. Yeah. It's okay to be sad. Every year on Jacob's birthday, I watch a video that I personally created of every picture of him until he died, because there will be no more. He'll always
Hmm.
be a teenager. And I play it to the most saddest music you've ever heard. And I cry.
Yeah.
And I do that every year because that's how I miss him. And every year on Mother's Day, I get out the last letter that he wrote me. He was a prolific writer, even as a young child. And I read that letter that he wrote me on Mother's Day, because that's the last one I'll ever get, right, from until I see him again. And those are times to be sad, and that's purposeful and mindful that I do that.
And temporary, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's temporary.
yeah, you can experience that emotion, which I think
Sure.
is sort of soul cleansing at
Yes.
times. And then you can pick up and move forward. You don't get stuck in that place. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people, is they just get stuck in that place, or they don't want to remember because it makes them sad. Like they fear that. And, you know, we need to get to a point where we can remember and be
Yeah,
sad and
exactly.
still live our lives.
A better
And
way to remember.
yeah.
A lot of times negativity in grief and loss, and not all grief and loss is from death. It's,
Oh yeah.
divorce, heartache, loss of a job that you loved, or just all kinds of things. I've personally got a list of 50 things that cause grief. And by the way, don't let me forget to give you the link. If they go to my goldscars.com,
Mhm.
I have a free 7 to Heal on there, and it lists things that cause grief besides death, right? But I lost my train of thought. But when you're going through, the grief process, right? It takes different paths for each person.
Wow. How can people find you in your book?
Yeah, Gold Scars right now is the newest website. SylviaMoreMeyers.com finds me too, but go to Gold Scars. That's the word gold and scar, just like scars. GOLDSCARS.com. You can learn everything there is to know about me except for my blood type, which I think is A positive. So now you know. And
I'm O positive for
you
anybody
got it
curious.
all. my husband's got one of those weird ones that Red Cross calls him all the time. Yeah.
Oh,
But yeah, they call him all the time. Say, can you get some more? But but goldscars.com, you'll get the book is there. My children's book series is there. If you put in, make sure I write it down. MJA 40, you'll get 40% off the book if you buy it from the publisher, and you'll see that on
oh,
there as well. Yeah, if you buy it
okay.
from Books A Million, thanks. If you buy it from Barnes and Noble, I really appreciate it. You buy it directly from the publisher, I don't lose any money off of it. It's the publisher's gift to me. So MJA, that stands for Morgan James Author 40, but MJA 40% off the book. So
And which site is that? Okay, so
goldscars.com.
directly
Yeah.
from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll
You
just put
can,
that. How about we just put
yeah,
that one up?
just put that one. That's the easiest one.
We'll
And
just
then
cut to the
you
chase.
can book me. You can watch some of my videos that I've done. And this show will be on that website. It'll have its own page.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the time you took to do this and sharing your story and your journey. And, um, I can see us maybe doing this again in the future
Yeah,
if you're willing to do that and taking on maybe specific things like
absolutely.
divorce and one-off topics that could really help people to navigate stuff and be a resource. So
We
I
do
really
a whole
appreciate you.
show just on pet loss because and
Oh yeah.
autism, and it's because that is as great a loss as anyone else in your family, losing a child, losing a pet for a child. And
Yeah.
again, anytime, just let me know. And I have to tell you, I'm a big fan of your show. I watch it. I love, my favorite moments are when you and the boys are in the car.
It's so
I
funny
think
because
that's so groovy.
it's like the least professional thing ever, but
It's
it
beautiful.
started out just because it was the only quiet place I had. And it was right before I went into the gym for self-care. And like, I just had stuff I wanted to like dump out. And it was like those do so much better than sitting behind a camera with good lighting and everything else. And trying to send the same message. So I think it's just relatable. And
Oh, it is. Yeah. I love
yeah,
them
so
talking
I
with you
appreciate that.
too. It's like, no, my pleasure. I really enjoy it. If I see you pop up and you're in the car, I watch.
Well, thank you. Elliot came to me last night. He wants to record something today. So we have to figure out what he wants to talk about today. So we'll see what happens.
You're going to have to put in some Minecraft first with your.
Yes. Well, yeah, she sent, I have like 5 more messages, and then she just like, are you done with your podcast interview yet? And I'm like, no, honey, I'm not. Like, here's a picture. We're still doing this.
Oh, well, I hope she gets better really soon. I know it's
thank
tough
you
to be
very much.
sick.
She's the best.
Yeah.
She's the best.
Good. 8 years old is just the best age anyway. So
yeah, I get to start like all my kids are grown, so I get to do this again. And I feel very, very
that's
lucky.
Cool. I have grandchildren now, so I really am enjoying that. I want more. I've ordered more, but they've only had 2.
I don't listen.
And no one's reproducing, and I'm very upset about it.
well, good luck with that. And
I'm trying to encourage them. I'm trying to coach them.
she gave me this for Christmas last year.
Oh, that is too cute.
Croc thing that I don't have Crocs for, so I put it on there.
I'll show you this. My 10-year-old granddaughter is an artist, and she draws me a picture. Yeah, she just. This is actually me. My nickname is Tizzy. My next book is called Being Tizzy. So she decided she would draw a picture of Tizzy when Tizzy was young.
Wow.
So I know, isn't that sweet?
Yeah.
See, everyone should have grandchildren. So
someday. Yeah.
Yeah. You're loved by your children. You are worshipped by your grands.
It's a whole circle of life thing, right? Because it was the same way with me with my grandparents.
Oh yeah. My grandmother. She was my mother was, like I said, standoffish and not attentive. I never shopped with her alone once in my whole life, or we never had a girl talk. We just didn't talk. I never sat on her lap or held her hand. But my grandmother was doting, and when she passed away, I was in the 2nd grade. It was tragedy for me. Yeah, it was pretty tragic. But I went to that funeral, though. I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate, you being able to help everybody else better navigate this. It's a healing process. I think it helps us personally to like turn our, like, I called it, what do I call it? I can't remember what I was going to say, but it's I take the negative things that have happened and I find a way to turn them into something positive for at least somebody else, which then ultimately ends up being positive for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I applaud you for that.
And I remember what we were going to talk about. We were talking about getting stuck. When you have any type of attention from a loss, even if it's negative, right? You can get stuck in that because it is attention, even if it's negative. And that happens to a lot of folks where they get into the, I've lost someone and now I must grieve. They stay there. And the reason they do is because they feel like they owe it to the person they lost to feel terrible until they die. And that I've pulled a lot of people out of that stasis where they're just stuck there going, but I can't feel better. It's never going to be the same. It's like, oh no, it's not going to be the same. Yeah. That's the glory of life, is every day is different. Right. Yeah. But they get stuck in that. Yeah. So, and that was that was the other point that got lost in the mix on that.
I'll move it around. Yeah. I'll move it around so it'll be in the right place.
That's all right. You're good. Yeah.
No worries.
Hey, I'm autistic, so you're lucky. I had a coherent conversation.
Look, we stayed on topic, right? Like I'm all over the place. We did. And it'll be good. It's all good. I appreciate it. No, thank you very, very much. Honestly, thank you very much. And I do think I think we should definitely do other episodes in the future if you're
definitely
up for that. Because I have I think it would help a
Definitely.
lot of people. So thank you very much.
I can't wait to have the cartoon character out and the next book out so you and I can talk, because it's all about Tizzy, and we're looking at children and the life as an undiagnosed autistic child
Wow.
from early. I've got the first like 4 chapters of it done. It's really good, and
Oh,
so
very cool.
it's hard because I'm going to college at the same time when I'm working on my Ph.D. So it's hard to find personal time to write, but I've been trying to knock out at least something every week,
Wow.
towards that. So,
That's amazing.
but
Absolutely. Anytime, let me know. And I think it's a really important message to send to people. So I'll have all your information in the show notes. People can
thank you.
click and find you and all of that stuff. And we will be in touch.
I'll be right here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
Too. All right. Real quick before I let you go, I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. I'll have all the information for this week's episode in the show notes below so that you guys can just click and learn more about my guest or sponsors. And you can also find me at theautismdad.com, where you'll have all of my links where you can contact me if you're interested in being a guest on a show or sponsoring an episode or just want to provide feedback or even show ideas. I love hearing from you guys, so feel free to do that. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you next week. See ya.